give it a moment for people to join before I get started here. Gather my thoughts together. Truth being, I really didn't intend on doing a live stream tonight, and then I remembered I had actually scheduled one yesterday because people are always asking me, "Hey, man, why don't you let me know ahead of time when you're going to do a live stream, and then I can join it?" It looks like my phone's acting up. Oh, it must be something with the power wire, so I'll unplug it. So I hope everybody's doing well tonight. Welcome back to my random channel, my random thoughts about life. I'm going to have to gather my thoughts here for a minute. As an open forum discussion, I'm leaving it up to you all to, if you have any ideas or questions rather that maybe you would like me to answer or talk about. But besides that, I would like to, earlier I made a video about motivation, or rather it was about Wu Wei, or the art of not doing. And it's something I'm very good at not doing. But after I was finished with that, I fulfilled my self-obligation. I went down to the rebuilding center and I picked up a new door to put in here, and been working on doing a remodel in the garage. And what was that question? Do you think, Daniel says, should I stay awake all night to reset my sleep? No. You sleep when your body is tired, man. I mean, at 45 years old, I don't stay up all night very often anymore. In fact, the only time that I stay up all night is when I'm tripping on LSD. And that's pretty much exclusively the only time. If I take mushrooms, I'm usually asleep pretty quickly, um, or at least in the wee hours of the morning. But yeah, I don't know. That's a different story altogether. Don't want to get into psychedelics yet. He says, I've achieved nothing since our last live. Hey, that's all right, man. Um, yes, biorhythms are real. Yes, they absolutely are. That's why everybody has their own. It's funny because I stay up pretty reasonably late for a lot of people, like maybe, not anymore as much, 11 or 12, right? I usually go to bed between 11 and 12, and I wake up between 7:30 and 8:30. It's a pretty consistent pattern. I get about 8.5 hours, 8 to 9 hours of sleep. And when I was younger, I used to be able to go through all kinds of weird. Uh, I'd go through some weird sleep patterns, especially when I was partying with my friends. And like my oldest son, he's 26. He could still, a while back he stayed up and he's like, I might as well just, burrow through the day and then I'll just sleep later tonight. You can't do that when you get older anymore. Your body really adjusts to the sleep patterns. And I can't just decide out of the blue that I'm going to stay up all night and just, but I wouldn't want to. The nighttime is not as enjoyable as the day. So, conscious dream. Hey, what up, Space Trav? What's up, my brother? How you doing? It's good to see you. Conscious Dreaming says, I hope everyone's hanging in there. Yep, me too. The truth is, it's up to you, right? I mean, it's up to us as individuals to whether or not we are having a hard time right now. Besides financial factors or work factors, if we're worried about what's going on in the world, let's just say, unless you live in a war zone or a riot zone, or you specifically are somehow involved in politics to where you're highly affected by all the issues going on, I mean, sure, you're going to have an opinion, but most people just have an opinion because we're watching the media, and it's hard to look away. You're wondering what's going to happen next. And, you know, one of the greatest things we can do is just step away from the news altogether for a month and then come back and ask yourself, what did I miss that I really shouldn't have missed? And you'll find that there's usually nothing. Most of the stuff is, the only exception to the rule is the guys who were out on an 8-month expedition. I think they were in, I think it might have been Hawaii or something like that. But they were on some expedition to the mountains for like 8 months. So I guess they had been gone. They'd left around like last February or something. And when they got back to town, they noticed everybody was wearing masks. And they came into the airport and they're like, oh shit, what's going on here? And now that would be a weird thing. And that happened to me when I was down in Portland. during the very beginning of the protests in Portland, before they became pointless riots, um, I, I went down to the second night of protests and I was doing a bunch of photography and filming. And as I was standing there on the edge of the crowd watching people speak, it was in the daytime still. And this guy kind of comes up and he's got his bike and he's like, "Hey, how's it going?" And we started talking. I was like, "All right." And he proceeded to tell me how weird it was to come back to town. He said, "Yeah, I've been on a hiking trip for like 2 months." And he had just got back, and he said it was so weird to come back to town and hear about a lockdown and all this shit. And so, yeah, last year wore on a lot of people. But as I said, if you weren't directly involved, if you didn't even know, it probably didn't change your life a whole lot, other than knowing people who are affected. And I don't know, it's it's such a weird time to be alive, but really that's just kind of arrogant for us to say that, because it's always a weird time to be alive. Every generation thinks that they are the final generation. In fact, every century that has passed, if you go back and you look through the not history books, but into the real history and the writings, it takes it. There's you have to get down pretty deep, but you start to find out that about the turn of every century, and especially every major marker, like a 500-year milestone, 500 AD, 1000 AD, even 100 AD, people were believing they were living in the end times. They truly believed that the apocalypse was upon them and Jesus would return, or whichever, God they believed in, that they were going to see the end of days. So in the end of the 21st century or the 20th century, we move into the 21st century and we start to go, well, we're definitely living in the end times, because look at all the shit around us. I mean, God, there's chaos, there's political upheaval, and we have nukes, and we can destroy ourselves overnight. And you step back and think back to the 50s, when there was actually children were practicing nuclear uh, drills in their schools, where we've actually come a long way. Where one side of me could say the world's falling apart, the other side says, well, for some people it is. But for a lot of folks, there's always going to be pain and strife, but we just see it clearly now because of the media and the internet. But it's not as bad as it seems for everyone. A lot of people do have a better, general better lives than people did hundreds of years ago, living in squalor and throwing your shit out of your own window onto the street below. We've come a long way in education, but we're still, we have the chance to take all this technology we were inventing and use it to better the future of mankind. And instead of doing that, we used it to further enrich those who were already wealthy. And it's pretty unfortunate. But I'm not any poorer than I was when I was poor last time, right? So I could sit and complain about the rich, and I could complain about the disparity of wealth. It's definitely a subject I talk about. But I also am not a person who has the desire to be a millionaire. I'm not a person who, it wouldn't hurt, it'd be nice, I could manage the money, but it's not something that I really work towards becoming rich. It's not something I desire. And for those who do, so be it. I guess my point is there's a lot of division in society and finger pointing over what other people are doing. And people are even angry about individual politicians that really have no bearing on their lives, because they hear it from the mouth of another guy that they do like. Or they go watch some, report on some alternative news outlet, and they all of a sudden think they have the truth, and they're going around talking about this one person and how they're evil. And it's like, do you even know this person? How is this person? What are you going to do about it, right? I mean, I don't know. I think it's important not to let the media affect us too much. I know a lot of people get really worked up over the bullshit that's going on in the world. It's just not worth the energy. It's really not. I've always been an independent thinker, but it's really hard to have discussions with people, even when they claim to be independent thinkers, who are following the line of thought that they're being fed by whoever it might be. The truth is, if you're really an independent thinker, you're not going to agree with a lot of people. That's my experience anyway. At least, let me put it this way, you're going to agree with a lot of people. You're just not going to agree on everything with any one type of person. So, yeah. I'm going to flip through these comments here. Yep. Seattle. I'm with you. I'm with you, Conscience. Oh, we lost you. Yep, life's been pretty good for me too, Space. Last year well, there was a lot of suffering going on and a lot of confusion. My family went on a month-long camping trip because we could for the first time. I mean, we had planned on taking a month off anyway, but my wife fortunately had the time off, so that was pretty awesome. Hello, Forrest. It says the balance between thinking and living, especially in terms of integrating psychedelic meditative experiences, would be interested to hear your thoughts on. Just floating it in the air. Let me read that again. I think I get what you're coming at there, and I think a lot of us who are in the psychedelic mindset could relate to this. Psychedelics to me, LSD, psilocybin, even MDMA at times, are tools. We hear that term a lot. Reminds me of that old quote. If all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And it's one of those quotes that you say, and I was thinking about this compared to politics earlier, right? If you're a politician and all you know is how to sign executive orders, or all you know is how to do this or do that, if you're military, all you know is how to fight, that's your thing, right? That's what you do. And everything looks like a battle to you if you battle constantly. So even if somebody wants like a legitimate debate, you might take it as a battle. When you've had the psychedelic experience, you realize that things are never quite what they seem, right? And I think what you're asking is, how do you take those amazing epiphanies that you have during your psychedelic experiences, or your meditative experiences, or just an epiphany out of the blue, which they do come? How do you integrate that into your daily living? And how do you live within that truth that you've found? And my answer to that is, we can't always do that. That even though we have an awareness that we are all one, that we are all connected, that our experiences have shown us the light, that we've seen things that we can never explain, but we want to explain them to others, it all comes down to good things. Even when I've seen my darkness and learned to embrace my darkness, I acknowledge that it's a positive thing. And that's because it helps me become a better person. Seeing who you are for real, it can be heartbreaking sometimes. But it's important, it's imperative, not to beat yourself up over it, but to learn how to overcome that side of yourself that you want to overcome. Psychedelics can break down those walls overnight really quickly. And sometimes people are left the next day saying, well, I've realized these things, but I don't know how to live this reality and this truth. All you can do, you think of psychedelics as like planting a seed. And the reason I used the hammer analogy was because a lot of people who have had an amazing epiphany on psychedelics, they think that the only way to obtain that is through taking more psychedelics, to stay in that state, right? People who meditate, who have amazing epiphanies as well, think that meditation is the only way. It's this old joke in the back of my mind of the person who says, I really need to meditate. And I think it was Alan Watts who said, if you say that to yourself, then don't meditate. If you ever think that I need to meditate more, I need to get in there and meditate, that's the old joke. That means that you don't need to meditate, because it's something that should come naturally. It should be a flow. And I'm not saying that there shouldn't be discipline. That's different. It's one of the do or do not things. It's like, okay, don't talk about it. Just do it if you're going to do it. Well, with psychedelics and meditation and religious experiences, such as going to a mega church and screaming with the pastor and all the other audience members, all of these can bring very similar feelings. Yeah, for example, the feeling people have when they go to a large church and they say it was an amazing experience. I cried, I felt the Lord, I felt the truth. Well, I've been to a music festival where I cried, I saw the truth and saw the Lord. And I've had trips in the middle of a dark woods where I've seen everything the same way. It really depends on what state of mind you're in. And when you're in an elated state of mind, it's easier to see these things for what they are. And then you come back to the real world and you think, I still need my coffee in the morning. I still get grumpy at times, right? I still need my quiet space. In other words, why can't we just be happy all the time and just peace and love, bro? You see these people at concerts, dead shows, festivals, whatever it might be, these pretentious fake ass hippies where they might think of me as kind of a hardcore dude because I'm brutally honest with shit. I'm the kindest guy, but I definitely speak my mind when I have something to say. But I kind of roll my eyes when people kind of like the way I roll my eyes at vegans when they tell me that I should be vegan. I have nothing wrong with the person being a vegan, and you can tell everybody about it if you want to. Just don't try to get me to convert to your way of life, right? And I feel like a lot of the psychedelic preachers are almost the same way. They're like, you've got to see this truth. And then you realize maybe that truth wasn't the truth that you thought you had. If that makes sense. Hmm. Yes, tools are a big part of our happiness space. Yeah, I have too. I've been going to many different states of mind, and what I found is that I think that, let me put it this way, I've been into these really deep states of mind where time seems to stand still or not make sense, or where you feel like everything has a purpose, or you understand the place of everything and the meaning. And then all at once, you realize that's not the way that we were meant to live. I've had to explain this to people who say, but you've got to see these connections and the truth, and there's a future laid out, and, people see these patterns in life. And I say, well, the best advice I ever got, somebody asked me, what's the best piece of advice you ever got? And it was, don't think too much. And it was in the last 10 years. I don't know. It was some random stranger on YouTube. It was an old guy. I think it was in his late 70s or something. But he just said, all I've learned is just don't think too much. And it was a person who had knew some of these things, who I had talked to, who understood some of the spiritual significances of life. But he said it in a way that I understood, that thinking too much is only going to hold you down. And if you don't think enough, you're going to get yourself in even more trouble. So if you haven't practiced it, I would highly advise continue thinking. But what he really meant is let things flow through your mind and then let that shit go, because it's going to just hold you down if you're sitting there trying to process and ponder on these little truths you've seen. There is no truth. There's no consistent truth. Um, there are truths that we can share temporarily, and then there are truths that we hold as individuals that nobody else holds. Then there's truths that we hold in our little groups or religions or political affiliations where we assume that, others are wrong. Often this is because others are wrong. For example, I mean, there are many, say, political issues that are up in the air, and there are others that are not so up in the air. For example, climate change. Even though most scientists agree that climate change is real and is happening, there's still a debate on whether how much the Anthropocene era is contributing compared to natural processes. We have no past map to go by. Sure, they can take core samples, and believe me, I'm a proponent of clean energy. I believe in climate change. I believe in global warming, and I do believe that the Anthropocene era has added a lot to this. But I also see that it's being overstated by those who don't have the real facts, because nobody has the full set of facts. And this is where it gets into debate and argument, and people get into these virtue signaling, like, well, I'm this person, I'm not that person. Even mask wearing has become virtue signaling for some people. And I think that that's just kind of a side effect of being human. Um, we want others to know where we stand and what our values are, and that's understandable. But for example, I in my early days when I was back in about 1991 or 2, no, wait, it was about 1991 or 2, I think in 92, the first time I took LSD. And from then on out, some of those experiences I had just absolutely blew my mind. And I went from being a guy with a mullet skateboarder to a fucking dead shirt wearing hippie guy, right? And for years, I was not as bad as Timothy Leary in preaching psychedelics, but definitely said that these things can open our minds, and I still stand by that. But as I got older, I realized that what the person was asking is, how do you incorporate this into your daily life? And I realized how many people started relying on psychedelics for their truth and insight, the same way we rely on media personalities or commentators or you know or celebrities, for God's sake, to give us the truth. And we think that the drug's going to give us the truth. And sometimes the truth does come, but it's not from the substance. It's something we already know. It's something that's built into our subconscious. And as somebody asked earlier about enlightenment, I said enlightenment is merely the chipping away of programs that we've been fed our whole life to reveal what was already there. That was the best way I'd ever heard it defined. Enlightenment is not something you learn, just like God is not something you can name. Hilarious, by chance, I watched this video where it was a 3 short movies in one movie. I don't know how it came on. I can't remember the name of it, but it was an old HBO home video movie that came up in my recommended on YouTube. It was called like Cool something. I thought it was music or Cool Wave or something. Thought it was music, turned it on, and it was a 3-part movie. And the first one was about, basically it's like this. An alien race comes out of the sky. Horrible B movie from the early 80s. They come down and then they tell the the U.S., the government that's there to meet them. They say that we're here, we're traders, we're here, and we go around the universe and we trade with other people. Here's what we're going to do. We'll give you free power, unlimited free power, and cure all your debt and heal all your sick. Only on one condition. You have to bring all your black people, and all the black people have to get taken up with us to space. So the whole movie is about these politicians and people in charge, which it's obviously made as kind of a joke, and I think it was a black movie or made by black folks, obviously, because it was making a point. They were like, should we really consider this? Should we actually give up all the black people so the rest of us can live a good life? It's hilarious. It is so fucking funny, but because it's just so stupid. But it makes a good point of how dumb people really are, and it's a representation of kind of the older slave trade. That what kind of a mindset does it take to think another person could be enslaved? But there was a part right between the first and second movies where it's George Clinton, who is from Parliament, Funkadelic, and he's got this funky hair, and it's just his head floating in space. Horrible graphics. And he says something like, what was it? Something about, there are those who think that you can name God, and those are the ones who don't understand God. God, I wish I could remember, but it's on my phone. I recorded it because it was so funny. But it was so appropriate. And it was an understanding that I've had, that those who feel that they have to put a name on divinity or on truth or on God, perhaps have not felt the true presence of what God really could be. Like, there was a time in my psychedelic past where I was so high, I swear I touched the Godhead. That was all in my own head. But years later, I processed that and realized that every divine connection happens right in our own head. Because we are the universe. We are everything. We are one. But that also brings me to another comment somebody said earlier, that we are all one. And I said, hey, that's true, but we are also individuals. And we should never abandon our egos. Never let your ego escape from you, and otherwise you just become a cookie cutter. These people who say, oh, I don't see race, I don't see color, I don't see male or female, and everybody's just a homogenized blob wearing robes, right? I know it's not that extreme, but there are some hippie people out there who just have that mentality. However, they might be the same ones with dreadlocks, that want to be seen because they have all their beads and Hey man, I'm one of those guys too. Why would I have long hair if I wasn't trying to show off my freak flag, right? My point being that it's okay to have an ego. It's okay to show off who we are, to express who we are to our groups, as long as we don't get wrapped up in thinking our group is better than another. You see what I mean? Yeah. See if I have any more questions. I'm going to back up for a minute here. I only wear a mask when I have to. It can cause bacteria in the lungs. I've never seen any such studies to show that, but I would just tell you this: if you're getting bacteria in your lungs, that means it's probably the same bacteria that came from your lungs. And the lungs are self-cleaning organisms. Um, no pun intended with the organ part. Let me just put it this way: I've learned that the human body can deal with shit. It's so funny because when I was younger, I used to think that the body was fragile. Like, God, all you have to do is just fall on the wrong part. You can break your neck or you can, suffocate to death. Holy shit, we're fragile. And as I got older, I realized how damn resilient the human body is. The thing is, if wearing a mask caused bacteria in your own lungs, that would be well known in the medical medical personnel. And I've seen absolutely no evidence to show that any doctors who wear masks all day long during surgery have bacterial problems in their lungs. But to be open-minded, I would be willing to look at it. I just don't want you to fall prey to this bullshit, misinformation that's going around about how wearing masks make you sicker. However, I would like to say this. Even if wearing masks is slightly inconvenient and uncomfortable, you might save somebody else's life by wearing it. And to me, that's the most precious thing we have is life. And if I can save someone else's by being inconvenienced for a moment, I think that that's important. But I don't know about the bacteria thing, and I really don't believe it. No offense, I don't. But Daniel says, "No, it took acid for ages, but you have a date, huh? Well, good luck. Good luck on that one." And I'm very cautious about what I do. I don't want people to think that I'm promoting psychedelics because Daniel, I mean, you seem like you consume a lot of substances just by the way that you mention them. And no offense, hiccup. No offense to you personally or your situation. I don't know you any more than I know you through YouTube, but you've been a subscriber for a long time, and I think of you as a little brother in a way, even though I've never met you. And I hope that's not offensive in any way. Um, but I want to see you do well, and I don't want to see anybody abuse drugs the way that my friends and I had when we were younger. I've always been pretty cautious, but I did some pretty stupid shit, and I overconsumed. I said I took a lot of acid in my teen years, which I did, until I was about 19 years old. I was about 19 or 20, and I got 6 hits of Felix the Cat acid from a guy at 7-Eleven, my buddy Troy, the same guy who had fear on his knuckles, who inspired my friend Mike and I to tattoo hate on our knuckles, this tattoo that I've had for the last 30 years. Totally different story. The guy told me 6 for 10. Usually the price was 3 for 10. He said, "But don't get me wrong. I'm selling it to you because I like you for this price, but don't think that it's cheap acid." And back then, you could get hits for $1 sometimes. I thought, whatever, it's probably not that great. I took one, waited an hour and a half or so. Then I took 2 more, even though he'd said don't only take one. And in about another half hour, I decided to just take the other 3. Now that night, the minute I had taken the other 3, the first 3 kicked in heavily, and I was tripping balls. And I started panicking. I knew what was coming because I was only at half capacity there. An hour later, I was gone. I had my head covered up. I called it my acid coma night. In fact, I was in an apartment living with my mom at the time, and we were moving the next day to this other condominium, or from an apartment to a condo. And I had to help her move. I was like the only guy. She had a boyfriend, but we were supposed to move all the furniture. She gets up at like 7 in the morning, and I'm sitting there just tripping balls. I'm like, "I'm sorry, I took acid last night." And I thought, oh God, the shit I must have put my mom through. And I think about the kids, kids today who their own mothers and fathers might see a guy like me sitting here talking about drugs, talking about LSD with reverence. and think you're promoting these drugs to my kids. And I want people to know that's not true. I'm all about harm reduction. I've always been very careful. After I took that acid that night, I didn't take acid after that for probably 7 to 8 years. That night completely ruined me for psychedelics for a long time. A couple of years before that, I'd tried DMT for my first time, and I had mushrooms several times. I quit everything. A couple of years later, my wife and I got together, and neither of us had tripped for a long time. So we'd been together for a little while. It was about 2001. We got a new album. It was Medeski, Martin, and Wood, Combustication. We put that puppy on and tripped to it. I'm not sure if it was the same night, but I believe it was the same night I was introduced to Modest Mouse, The Moon in Antarctica, which that album blew my mind. It was so fucking good, and to this day I just love it. We started going to see Modest Mouse after that, and Medeski, of course, but when you, okay, it was just Modest. Medeski I'd first heard years before when we took mescaline with some friends of mine at a house I was living at. And just crazy. Medeski, Martin, and Wood is crazy music to listen to when you're tripping. It's fun. But anyway, getting off topic here, if there is a topic. Psychedelics I have strong reverence for. It wasn't until my wife had been together and I had been together and then we'd moved into our apartment that I did it again. Between those two times, I was doing some stupid shit. Between the time when I was 20 and I'd quit psychedelics till the time when I was in like 23 or 24 when I started tripping again, there was I guess there was like more of a 6 year period, 18 or something. I did other drugs, bad drugs, drugs that I should never have touched, and drugs that I to this day won't touch unless I'm in a really stupid mindset. In fact, the only time I've done any substances like blow was when I was at a concert and I'd been drinking heavily, and there was a dude right next to me railing up lines on a big platform, and he's like, "You want some?" It's not like I asked the guy or anything, but as soon as I did, I was like, "Oh yeah, I got his number." And what did I do when I got home? I burned his fucking number, because that's how addictive those substances are. So I want to say, if you are a person who is prone to taking drugs and you want to experiment with your mind, just stay away from white drugs. Stay away from all powders. And yes, that even includes MDMA for the most part. What I've found with MDMA is that most people that I've talked to and met just can't handle taking proper doses. They say that I believe it's something like 1 milligram per kilogram is the dosage you want to take. Okay? So that means me at 165 pounds, that's what, 80, so it's like 75 kilos or 70, 75, something like that. So I'd be taking 75 milligrams, which is 75 1,000th of a gram. Okay, it's a very small amount. Now, that means it's less than 1/10 of a gram. You should never take more than 1/10 of a gram unless you're going to get what you expect, and you'll probably vomit and be loopy. But I've talked to people who take a half gram at a time. They take 8 times more than I take. I talk to guys who brag about taking a full gram in a night. These are the same guys who brag about doing an 8 ball of Coke, or how much tweak they could consume. And I don't want to get into these drugs, but I think it's important to address them while I'm talking about psychedelics, because a lot of people have a history with white drug use and don't want to talk about it. It's almost like there's certain subjects in today's world we can't talk about because it's like cancel culture stuff, right? It, even me bringing up that movie about black people and sending them off, somebody could take that the wrong way, and oh my God, this guy's saying all these things. I sent a text to somebody, and somebody said that they thought something was racist as fuck whenever anybody said it, and I said I disagree, and they said that's racist, and I was like, cool, I'll own that. It was a joke between us, but I was like, I'm not a racist. I know I'm not a racist, so why should I have to justify it? Well, when we talk about drugs, it's kind of very similar in the way that, well, I know I'm not a druggie. Why should I have to justify it, right? You know, people say, oh, you shouldn't use this drug. Well, why not? The truth is that every drug has its day and age, its place. And even amphetamines, which were regularly given to soldiers in World War II, Why do you think there was a blitzkrieg? How do you think the German soldiers could push forward so far? It was all meth. They were all doing meth. They were all tweakers. Yes, all of the Nazi armies were tweakers, and that's something to consider. But it makes you paranoid. It makes you sleep horribly. You have hallucinations. I'm not even going to tell you how long I stayed up for the longest time, but let's just say the hallucinations from lack of sleep blow anything out of the water that you will see with psychedelics. They're real hallucinations, unlike geometric hallucinations like with DMT. Dimethyltryptamine visuals can be wild. So I'm going to go through comments real quick here to make sure I didn't miss anything. The universe is within us. You are correct. You are correct, conscious dreaming. Daniel says, I don't do many drugs, trust me. Good. I'm glad. But I have. I get you, bro. Hey, man. I'm just telling you to be cautious. You're your own man. And I never like to tell other people what to do and what not to do. But I have found that I've known a lot of people in my life who have taken too much, and they do tend to listen to me when I tell them I've been there and that I've had these experiences. Now, look, when I talk about my own drug control problems, it would be a very private discussion, but I found myself, and this is something I found as I get older. When I was younger, I was a lush. I like to do a whole bunch at once of something and have a good time, right? Now I'm moderate. In other words, I don't drink, 5 mochas in a row of coffee. I have one coffee at a time, and I wait for, later on, and I'll have another one when I want. Same way with kratom. I don't take an ounce at once. I take, a couple teaspoons, and then later on, when I need more, I'll take more. Cannabis is something I used to smoke a lot of. I'd sit down and smoke a whole bowl several times a day. It's weird because people will tell you if you smoke pot your whole life, they think that all drugs you just keep consuming more and you can never stop. They'll say the same thing about heroin and amphetamines and coke and everything else. It's true to an extent, especially with cocaine, things like that. Builds up tolerance really quickly. But for users who don't binge, every drug has its dosage that is consistent each day. So, for example, when people say, why kratom stops working after a while? No, it does not. Absolutely not. I've had no problem with kratom working for 10 years now. But the kratom quality went down. So therefore you start to question, is it the kratom quality or is it me? Then you think, well, actually, you find out that like with kratom, if I'm sick or I have a cold, virus, anything like that, it doesn't work. It's really weird. Like I can take my normal dose and get absolutely no feeling off of it. The next day with the right meal and everything, feeling right, it kicks my ass. Heroin doesn't work that way, okay? Heroin and pills work, regardless of how you feel. And it makes me wonder how kratom kind of interacts with our own immune system, right? It's really strange stuff. Not sure what to make of it, but I wonder if anybody else has noticed that too. Amy says, sometimes I watch Fox News for entertainment. Well, that's okay. I went to Alex Jones InfoWars this morning and Breitbart. And the funniest thing I saw was I took a screenshot of the Breitbart website. And it's loaded with fear-mongering about how Biden's going to destroy the country and everything else. And then you flip down and there's an ad, a giant full-page ad as you're scrolling down for senior citizen toenail clippers. No shit. And I realized at that moment, I've seen so many senior products on Breitbart. And I was like, so that's their clientele? Like, when you look at advertising on a site, you can tell a lot about what kind of people visit that site. You don't put up a giant full-page banner for senior citizen toenail clippers. They're easy. They look like dog clippers. They're larger to fit your hands, I thought, what a weird thing to sell. Something I would see nowhere else but Breitbart. But yeah, anyway, every other ad is about the NRA. And it's funny because I've seen like dozens of NRA ads on both of their sites lately. They're desperate because they just filed bankruptcy the other day. It's like, the NRA is one of the biggest jokes in history. It started out as a, gun group and safety advocates. Now it's just lobbying for Congress for, more money. It's all about the fucking money. But Fox News, I cannot say I watch. I don't watch any news. I cannot watch commentaries. If I want to get a story, I have to read it myself, and it has to be from a neutral party, and that is fucking hard to find. I know that there's some people out there who can just read the news without being partial, but for the most part, even when you read Associated Press articles, right? It's like there's always some bias in there, but the person that wrote it. Like discussed it this morning, I went on AP, I was just scan the headlines, then I leave. I just want to see what happened, right? First thing talks about Trump impeachment, and I was just like, God, I don't give a shit about that. And all my people know how I feel about him, but I think it's a waste of taxpayer money and time right now. But anyway, that's a completely different story. I was still talking about drugs. Faux news, says Space. Yes, my man. News in America is mental. Yes, it is. I completely agree, my friend. Coke is dumb. Yes, it is. Marvin. Hello, Marvin. Says, thank God for Kratom. Helps me get off heroin. 5 years clean. Brother, blessings to you, man. I should say, good fucking job. Congratulations. That's a really hard one. I mean, I have people that I know personally who have been addicted to heroin for a long time, who I have tried to help with Kratom. Sometimes it's just not, they don't want to do it. And unfortunately, one person who told me that they started taking Kratom and they went to their doctor because they were addicted to Kratom, and they started taking Suboxone to get off it. They said, yeah, I've been on Suboxone for 2 years now, but it's really helped. I was just like, oh my God. Like, I know nature is not always better than man-made. I've taken Subutex and Suboxone. I know what that shit does. You know, even, oh God, a couple milligrams just fucks you up. It's just horrible stuff. And it's extremely, extremely addictive, and the side effects are horrible. But anyway, in other words, I've known a lot of people trying to take Kratom to get off Subutex, and then now there's somebody taking Subutex to get off Kratom. But that was kind of fucked up. But people have asked me, are you ever going to stop taking Kratom? Why don't you take a break? And I'm like, well, I don't take a break from coffee or cannabis either. But I have. Years back, I got busted. The guy I was riding with was going 80 miles an hour on 84 going east. We were going camping. Shouldn't have been driving that fast. We got pulled over. I had weed in the car, but this was before it was legal in Oregon. Didn't have a top for the film container or a baggie, so I just stuck it in my bag and went. Super stinky weed. Dumb decision. Get pulled over. The cop smells the weed. I admit that I have weed, stupidly. And here was the thing. We had a loaded 357 under the seat. I was a felon for pot from before. I knew that if I got busted with that, I was going to jail. It was like a 5-year mandatory minimum for felons or something. I wasn't sure of the details, but I knew that he asked if he could search my side of the car, and I let him. And he went through my pouch and he found my mushrooms, which I kind of forgot I had in there. I didn't realize at the time that mushrooms were a felony in any quantity. So I begged. He didn't arrest me. He arrested me, but let me go. We went camping. He even told me you could get weed at the next gas station probably. There's always people selling it. I did. I got there at 11 p.m. and I started asking, who's got weed? As a joke. And some dude's like, meet me around back. And I bought a quarter ounce off this guy. Weirdest thing. And then we started joking. Maybe that was the cop's son. So they just sell your weed back to you, right? It's just, but anyway, where was I going with that one? Yeah, I got busted. Let me go back here for, God damn it. There was a point to that. I swear to God. We're talking about Kratom. Oh, yeah. So when I got back to town, I had to go on probation. I had 2 years of probation in Washington here. And I had to call every day, every morning to call, see if my color orange came up. And if it did, I had to go to work late because I had to go up and take a piss test and wait in this lobby until they called me. And then pissed with my dick hanging out in front of this dude watching it. Not the funnest thing. Probably only took maybe 7 to 8 UAs during the whole time, maybe 10. But over that 2 years, but still, that was every month or two, and you never knew when it was coming. So one day I just said I'm going to quit smoking pot. And I'd been smoking for 20 years or more. I just quit cold turkey. Didn't have any issue with it. No withdrawals, no symptoms, no problem. And I quit for 2 full years, and then I just started again once probation was up because I enjoy smoking cannabis. It's not about necessarily an addiction. It's just part of my life. It's like eating food, you know. But I can see this getting out of hand for some people. I know people who can smoke so much fucking weed and still get a ton of things done. Then I know people who don't smoke any and don't do a damn thing. It's really not that weed makes you lazy. It's just that some people who are already lazy prefer to smoke weed. Right? It's just like drinking alcohol doesn't make you an alcoholic. It's just that alcoholics drink a lot of alcohol. People who are predisposed to addictive personalities, which could bring me to alcohol. I wasn't going to buy any beer tonight. I decided I was just going to, just not go to the store and buy any because lately I've been just trying to drink less. I'm not, am I an alcoholic? I don't know. I drink about every day, but I don't drink very much. Some nights I drink more than others, but I have to be honest with myself and decide when is too much. When does it cost too much? When is it infringing on my own freedoms and my own rights by, drinking? And maybe I have a couple too many and don't eat properly and wake up with a hangover. Then you tell yourself all day, I'm not going to ever drink again. Then 8 o'clock creeps around. You're like, beer sounds kind of good. They're coping mechanisms for a crazy world we're living in right now. Good. So your boyfriend is 2 years clean. Fucking congrats to him. Space says, I think most military powers were using it. You're correct. I was going to say that about the, yeah, we were using it over here too as well. Daniel says they don't have Suboxone in the UK. Is that right? Really? Wow. I'm surprised. Do you have Subutex? I mean, the only difference is Suboxone is Subutex with naloxone in it, which is supposed to be a blocker, but it doesn't seem to make a bit of fucking difference because the shit's strong. It's pretty intense. Buprenorphine is horrible, says Mike. Yes, it is. Mike says, what's your favorite cannabis strain? Whatever's in my jar. No, honestly, I do have a favorite. It's Great White Shark, which I haven't seen in several years. I came across a clone of it. We worked for this guy all day doing construction for him, and all he gave us was one clone each. But I made that clone the best. I harvested so many off that mother. Ended up growing a sea of green, and this weed was so sticky and just crystally and gooey. It was amazing. Grew it for a couple of years, and then something happened where I had to shut down shop, and I just kind of stopped growing. A couple of years later, I got my license for medical here in Washington, started growing again. At that time, I was growing Durban poison, and I think to answer your question, my favorite would be somewhere between White Shark, Great White Shark, which was actually, I believe, White Widow and OG Kush. And OG Kush is my first favorite strain, though. Just the old-fashioned, purebred indica OG. I like Trainwreck. God, man, I like so many different strains of cannabis. I mean, these days there are too many. But Durban Poison's one of my favorite sativas. OG Kush for indicas. Yep. Space says Mendo Breath and Runts. See, I've never heard of either one of those. I'm guessing that Mendo would be Mendocino, unless I'm wrong, but I haven't heard of either one of those strains. And to tell you the truth, the one thing I'm not impressed with cannabis these days is potency. It's lost all meaning. I mean, it was really cool when the first strains came out back in the day that were like 25%, 28%, up to 30% THC. And then you smoke them, and you're like, yeah, it tastes good. Holy shit, that's strong, it's crystally, but it just doesn't do it for me. And this all started for me about 10 years ago when, well, more like 5 years ago when legal weed really became a big thing, and when there were a lot of options to choose from, when you could look at the percentages and know what you were getting to an extent, even though those labels could be from the last batch, you never know. Point being that you buy something, you try it, you can tell what strain it is, you know it's the properly labeled strain, hopefully, and you can say, why was that just not very good, or why was this one so damn good? So during the last 420 sale at the, well, it was 2 years ago actually, at the weed shop, I went down there and whatever strains were on sale, I decided to partake in some. A couple of them that they had, and I'm trying to remember what it was called. It was purplish. It was from a local grower. Man, what was it? It doesn't matter. The purple weed always smells like grapes, okay? Now, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that this is a true thing. It has to do with the same essences that are in grapes that give it that smell. I don't know what it is. I can't remember the specific terpene that gives it that smell. You know, there's a lot of different ones. There's D-limonene, there's beta caryophyllene. Um, my buddy used to actually backblend terpenes with hash oil, but totally different story. Um, I'm not impressed with terpenes. I'm not impressed with or like aftermarket added terpenes or distillate, or which is pure THC distilled down. I'm interested in all the other compounds that come with the plant. So I want a whole plant extract. And if I'm going to take any type of extract, but really, you know, like this shit I got right here. It's funny because this is actually, it's funny, this is the same cannabis label I had on here from years ago. This is what I grew this year from a seed that I got out of a bag of weed that had seeds in it, and I was unhappy, and I said, I'm going to grow a plant out of this and get my money's worth. And I did. Smells kind of like slightly minty, kind of pepperminty, a little bit of lavender, eucalyptus, and somewhat chocolatey. This stuff is amazing. I've been smoking it for 3 months. It just looks like outdoor. And it still blows away most of the shit that I buy locally. Even my wife hasn't complained about it at all. We've been smoking it for 3 months, and I never smoked any strain that long without getting completely exhausted with it. But anyway, I'm just talking about cannabis now. Um, hello, Tom. How you doing, man? Sucks to have to rely on horrible things because it's your best bet to function at the 9 to 5. If you're talking about substances, I know what you mean. Sometimes we need a little boost. Lamb's breath, I've heard of that one. Jake Summers, hello, my friend. He says, what do you do when you can't find your tribe or people you live with, you jibe with deeply? He says, damn it, I keep hitting the wrong button. He says, I get along great with everyone, but I feel like an outsider with just about everyone in every group. Oh, brother. Me too. I don't know what else to say to that. In all honesty, me too. I felt like an outsider my whole life, okay? I found my yearbook from junior high earlier the other day, and I was like, people left nice notes in there and stuff, and have a great summer, Josh, but really it was like just the other nerds at the school or the skaters that I was a skater back then, but I realized I did have some friends, but I was always kind of on my own. I was always felt awkward. To this day, I still feel that way. I have a few really good friends. I don't see them all the time, but people that I could trust in, people who I would trust my life with, right? If you have a couple friends, even one friend that you could call up to trust your life with, or when you really need a hand, that's something awesome. Fortunately, I've never needed anyone to that extent where I'm just desperate, and I'm grateful for that, but I'd be there for them too. As far as a group, that's much more complicated to find a group, because if you're a thinker, an independent thinker, especially somebody who does a lot of deep thinking about subjects that are controversial, you're going to come to the conclusion at one time or another that both sides are wrong about an issue. And because of this, you'll find yourself the outsider for the rest of your life. You're the lone wolf, or you'll be a philosopher. Philosophers are always lone wolf. Have you ever heard of a philosopher's club? Of course not. Every philosopher has their own thinking, right? Their own patterns. If you look and you compare the philosophies of even the philosophers that used to hang out, back in the days of Socrates, all of their ideas seem pretty obvious. Like, oh, well, yeah, of course anybody could think of that. But when you look at it in the big picture, you realize that all these philosophies were totally different, all the way up to recent days. And so who are our philosophers today, right? You can't even find groups of people like that because they tend to be lone wolves by choice. I used to think that I was an extroverted person. Never really gave it much thought. Just figured I'm an outgoing person. I like people. And I do. But I realized in the last couple of years that I'm actually very introverted. I share traits on both sides. I can hang out in a big group of people and feel totally comfortable. I can go out to a concert and not feel awkward. And I can go dance with strangers and have a good time and smile and laugh and meet people and make new friends. Like Space, who was on here commenting. I met him at a Fish concert, I think, or was it the Dead? I don't even know. Great guy, and I'm glad I know him. You know, he's become one of my tight friends that I trust because I can sense that trust in other people, but they're very hard to find. Sometimes it's just spending some time with people. So finding that group sometimes requires we go out and find the group. But if we're looking for it online, it's just going to be an echo chamber most of the time. Amy says his friend, yeah, what the Uber driver said, is it how he does cold showers and wakes up at 4 a.m., does the green juice, listen to people, see what on the internet. You think that everyone right now is an internet millionaire flying in a private jet and living a super healthy life. I would never think that. I don't know who thinks that, but I'm sure people do. The idea of being a millionaire is a big joke these days, but yeah, I mean, as far as the getting up in the morning, I mean, I worked in construction for years, and I'd get up, at 6, try to get out the door by 6:30 or so to beat the traffic, 7 at the latest, and I had this green juice smoothie I'd make every day, take it to work with me, blended, and I drink it when I got there, get to work, do my job, and that was kind of my motivation for work, right? My green juice smoothie, I guess. Amy says, there's so much that we should be doing, though. It's easy to feel like you're falling short. I think we're all just trying to stay sane now, aren't we? Yes, that's true. Except for what should we be doing is the question, I guess. This is something I've started to really analyze lately heavily is what does it mean to be an activist in today's world, right? Whether you're talking about personal issues or world issues, we expect too much of ourselves. We think we have to be superheroes all the time. Here's one thing I'd like to ask people. Whatever happened to just chilling out and watching a movie? Or just sitting and doing nothing or reading a book? I know a lot of people out there are probably like, what? I do that every day. But for most of society these days, it seems like we always have to be moving, always have to be doing something. I don't know. It's like even when I'm not doing something. Like I said, I've been working with leather. Earlier, I made this wallet this morning, and it was my first wallet. And you can see that the sewing is horrible on it because I had to poke each hole, and I thought it would look better than it did. But actually, I'm still 10 years old because I put Velcro. Velcro is my favorite thing. So you open it up, and you've got your two billfolds with your cards that you can slide out, right? And the separate compartment for your bills, my $5 bill, and a very simple wallet. And then after that, I went and made this pouch. I call it Moop pouch, which I just used some cool weave on the side for sealing it up. And let's see if I can get closer there. There you go. It's kind of a cool pattern. And then I put a little belt loop on the back, and you open this thing up, more Velcro, and it fits a Ziploc bag in here, so I can pick up garbage or call it a Moop bag, right, at Burning Man. But it fits perfectly on my belt, and I started making all these stupid little leather things. And it's like you just said, there's plenty of things we should be doing. Even when I'm creating and doing art, painting, drawing, making new things, and inventing, I feel like it's a waste of time. Like there's other things that I should be doing, and that's a crutch. For me, anyway. I'm still trying to figure out how to process that one. What is a waste of time? I told my wife the other day, I said, my only problem is money. If I just had enough money, I wouldn't feel guilty about doing my art projects, and I could just focus totally on art and not care about anything else. But she's like, that's not true. And she's right. It's not true. There's things like the garage isn't going to get fixed by itself, right? But then again, if I had enough money, I could pay a friend or someone else to do that for me while I'm doing the fun things that I want to do. So this is another question. We're told to follow our passions, but what if our passions aren't making any money? Or what if we're not good at business? What if we're good at art but horrible at sales? These kinds of things. Shit gets really complicated really quick, man. Space says, you've been pressing hash rosin, making it from fresh frozen bud. Nice. I saw your process, dude. I haven't seen any of your videos pop up. Space Traveler has a, oh, my phone's about to die. God damn it. I knew that would happen. Wow, it already went to 15% in an hour. I guess I am using it a lot here. So if my phone dies on you, then it's the end of the live cast. There you go. But yeah, Space was making these videos of, it was like Breaking Dab. It's like Breaking Bad, but making hash from an RV. And you should keep that up, man, if you're still doing it. I know that making videos is a pain in the ass, but dude, you need a GoPro, man. Get rid of that phone. My GoPro is like just the most awesome thing. I've been filming the leather projects. I got the head strap, the chest strap, all the different straps, so I can just film whatever I'm doing at any time. And then I even made this little mini GoPro, basically just a simple leather pouch. I can see the screen on the back. It's got a little Velcro thing so I can take it out and put it back in the case. Super simple, but non-intrusive, so I can just wear it while I don't want to have a big bulky chest harness on, or when I want to film things secretly. But anyhow, having a GoPro, dude, for doing the videos you do with pressing hash would be useful as hell. Really useful. Hello, that guy, Ben. How you doing? You're describing the terpene profile of your herb. I love it. Yeah, dude. I've had quite a fascinating look into terpenes, and I've got lists and lists of research and info that I've done on these things, and it seems that terpenes themselves have mutual. I mean, okay, for anybody who's wondering, what's a terpene? Okay. And essential oils, basically, they're all terpenes. A terpene is nothing more than a chemical, or rather a molecule, that has a certain smell. Now, sometimes these molecules can have their carbon rings with different atoms, or rather atoms in different places, which they call an isomer, or I think that's an isomer. But anyhow, it's basically a mirror image of that same compound. If you just move one molecule to the other side in the same place, completely different smell. So you're getting cinnamon smells, you're getting clove, you're getting peppermint. Basically, all of these are a benzene ring with several molecules in different places, like keys to a lock. When you smell a compound, you're no. Whoops, looks like my phone died. I don't know where it was, but anyway, it's just like when your brain. I was talking about terpenes and profiles. Um, anyway, terpenes fascinate me because essential oils really do have some benefits. It's just very difficult to. When the whole market's loaded with places like doTERRA and Young Living, these companies that basically take essential oils and turn it into a pyramid scam. And if there's anyone out there who's a member of those, or Amway, or Herbalife, or any of that, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to offend them, but a lot of these are just bullshit products. Yes, essential oils can be awesome tools for cleaning, for mood, for many different things, especially cleaning. But it doesn't mean that you need to buy a little bottle this big for 50 bucks. I mean, they sell drums of this shit. I mean, it's the factories that produce these things are huge, and they dilute it to hell. So anyway, the smells in cannabis are the exact same terpenes that you smell in oranges, right? Grapes, lemons. If you smell pop, it smells like lemons. It's not that it just smells like lemons. It's the same smell that lemons have, the exact same molecule. This is why cannabis is so useful, because it has all these different terpenes. And the belief is that these terpenes work in conjunction with not only the THC, or tetrahydrocannabinol, but also the CBD, or cannabidiol, as well as the CBN. And CBN is a lesser known compound within cannabis that seems to help with mood, appetite, things like this, helping you to sleep. But CBN is something that is created during the deterioration of THC over a long period. So the cannabis I have that's 5 years old, that's been sitting in a bucket, is loaded with CBN. So when I take that and I'll make an extract out of it using an RSO, or a quick wash method, a QUISO, which is put it in the freezer, put your alcohol in the freezer, 99% isopropyl alcohol. Then I pull them both out, fill the jar up with it, shake it lightly for about 10-15 seconds while it's still cold, so you don't get vegetation or plant matter, but just resins. Then pour it through a filter, take that, put that on a tray, and let it evaporate on a basically a 6x9 Pyrex dish on top of a griddle, and I just set it there on low and have the fan blowing out the window and over it, and it dries out in a couple hours. Then I take that, I scrape up that hash oil, put that in the oven, and I decarboxylate it, which is decarbing is when you're activating the THC to orally available from THCA. Once that's decarbed, then I scrape that up and I wait till it's just cool enough to add half an equal amount of coconut oil, and then I mix that all up, and then I pour it into capsules. And I made these little blue capsules that just kick your ass. And somebody like, you can't take more than one if you're not a stoner. I mean, if I take 3 of them, I'll be loopy as hell. I think my wife took 4 of them on the plane, and she was just out of it. But oral cannabis is fascinating in this way. I really like it. So back through the comments here. I'm thinking of becoming an English as a second language teacher, then making my art for myself, donate it. That's a good way to do it. That necklace looks so Egyptian, says Tom. Huh. Oh, this one, yeah. This is a raven or a corvid, or crow, if you will. And it's actually stained glass. So you can see these are all divided by, I think pewter or whatever they use. And I had to duct tape it and then epoxy it too, because it's had some problems. But my wife got this for me. It came from Russia, from a small handmade vendor, I think, because I remember she got a couple, one for my son of a different kind. And yeah, it's broken a couple times and I keep fixing it, and I really, really like it. Corvids are the most intelligent birds, and yeah, they're smarter than eagles. They have to be. See, here's the thing. Let me see if I can this just popped into my head. Eagles are very intelligent birds, but crows are smarter. The reason why is because eagles, they use power. They use their hunting ability to dominate their prey. So all they have to know is how to be tough, right? Corvids, on the other hand, have to be sneaky. They have to get food from someone else, or steal somebody's stash, or learn to recognize faces because they live in cities with people, right? And they'll remember a face for life. Not only that, crows can actually teach your face to their kids, so their kids will squawk at you and dive bomb you too. Super smart birds. And this was just an epiphany I had just now, which is why I want to share it. Corvids have to be smart because they're living in a crazy world. All the eagle has to do is have a good eye and big talons. This is interesting when you think about it, because is this any different from human beings? Doesn't it seem like the ones who are the big tough guys who are all acting, tough out there, they're very small-minded? I don't really know any tough guys who are very intelligent. Everybody I've ever met who considers themselves intelligent, or others consider intelligent, have probably moved past the tough guy attitude and realized you don't need to look like a badass. And this is nothing to say there's anything wrong with bodybuilding or weightlifting or karate or ninjutsu or anything else. I mean, those are lessons people are teaching themselves. As long as you don't think that weightlifting or something makes you better or tougher than anyone else, because toughness is all in here and in here. It's nothing to do with how strong you are. You can fight your way out of 10 guys, but if you can't fight your way out of an argument or a problem, then there's an issue there. So that's why corvids probably have to be smart, because they're scroungers. Maybe that's why people who live, really crazy lives are pretty damn smart people a lot of the time. Anyway. Back through the comments. Forrest says, hello Forrest, says, random curiosity, how did you meet your wife? Well, that's a great question. I'd love to tell you. Back in 1998. I was working at a gas station in Oregon. And in Oregon, you can't pump your own gas. I have to mention that because most states you can. I think it was only Oregon and like Maine or something, or New Jersey, I think, where you couldn't pump your own gas. So people come in and, you're not allowed to touch the gas pumps, only the attendants. So I worked there daily, constantly. And the next door, there was a restaurant called Banning's. There's only one that I know of. It was in Tigard, Oregon. Banning's restaurant. And they had really good omelets and breakfast food. It was really well known for their breakfast. They were open 24/7, and everybody would go there and, party after partying and eat late at night and stuff. But when I was at the gas station in the morning, I'd go order an omelet and go over there, and this girl, this cute little girl, Michelle, who would write little notes to me and have a nice day, stay dry, stuff like that, with a little smiley face on the inside of my food. I mean, who does that unless they're hitting on you? I was a dumbass. I am pretty dense when it comes to that. And at the time, I wasn't into relationships. I just had issues with finding a girlfriend. I was like, fuck it. I never really tried. It just wasn't on the top of my mind. But eventually, she ended up asking me out. And I was like, yeah. And we started dating. I remember we were sitting in the parking lot, and she told me she had a son who was 3 years old. And I was like, oh, shit. That was a weird moment for me, because it was like, wow, am I ready to fall in love with somebody who has a child? And I've raised him from the time he was 3 with her, and he's 26 now. So, God, we've been together 23 years this year. Yeah, 23 fucking years. Oh my God. Wow. It's crazy. But that's how we met. I worked at the gas station. She worked at the restaurant next door. It was one of those little love note stories, I guess. But my wife is my best friend. My wife is the most amazing person that I know. My wife is, I can't say enough about her, and I never talk about her because I don't, want to burden others with my personal life, but my wife deserves so much better than me. That sounds wrong, because she'd be like, why would you say that, It's just how couples are when they really get along with one another. We get along really well. She puts up with a lot of bullshit from me. Not me attacking her or anything, but usually it's just my lack of doing things like, well, I should clean the bathroom more, things like that. Typical guy stuff, right? Do the dishes. And with her, I have no complaints, She's not a girly girl or whining about things or complaining. She takes shit with gusto. She's a tough cookie, man. My wife is awesome. I love her to death. I'm so glad to have her with me, because I don't know how I'd do this alone, honestly. I know that I always say that I'm a strong person, and I'd be better off, or I should say I'd be fine wherever I'm at, but I always know in the back of my mind I'd be better off with somebody that I love, and somebody that cares and loves me. But it's all I've known for over half my life, so I don't know any different, right? I would be probably a completely different, maybe not a different person, but who knows where I'd be if I hadn't met her. If you're still looking for somebody, if a lot of people want to be single, and good for them, that's great. I personally didn't really have a preference, but now that I have somebody in my life that I can trust and that trusts me, I wouldn't have it any other way. Hello, Share Bear. How are you, dear? It's been a while. I haven't seen you. Amy says, tough guys are very scared people. Brave people help others. That's absolutely correct. And that would be kind of like the tough guys who want to fight people. Or let me put it this way. Think about the tough guys driving around in their pickups on the U.S. border, scaring migrant families because they think that an invasion of immigrants is what's really destroying this country. I'm not denying that we have issues with immigration. I'm just saying that there are people who get in a group, a bunch of, well-to-do white boys who have their pickups and they're, they've got their families, enough food and ammo to be able to buy gas and go out there to the desert and drive around thinking they're protecting it. Meanwhile, scaring the shit out of families. I mean, there have been cases of, them holding like these families at gunpoint until the border patrol gets there. In their mind, they think they're tough guys. But the fact that they're out there trying to stop immigration is not because they think that it's helping, or that's part of it, but it's not because they think that they're really in imminent danger. It just is because they're actually scared, that they're fearful, that they're... Think of all the fear-mongering that has gone on in this country over the last fucking 20 years. I ain't going to say 4 years, because it wasn't Trump. Trump was just a symptom, and, there's almost too much positivity from him being in office as long as he was, even with all the bullshit that he caused, because it shook up the system. In other words, it's kind of like hanging the whole U.S. system and shaking the money out, seeing where it's at, and we realize we're totally failing. We can't even deal with our vaccines properly. I mean, even if it was, you think of people say that the vaccines are just a way to inoculate people and put a chip in them and control them and change their DNA. I'm like, if that was the truth, then the government would at least be competent enough to have the vaccines on hand and ready to go, right? Even if they weren't legitimate. I mean, it's like we can't even keep up with the things in our society, the basic things that make a society flourish and function. It's really pathetic. But yeah, anyhow, there's plenty of tough guys out there that want to tell you they know what's best and that they're defending themselves and protecting themselves when really the pen is always mightier than the sword. We know this. No. Nah, Amy says, how sweet. I bet she's the extrovert. You're talking about my wife? No. My wife is one of the kindest people. She'll talk to anyone. She is not an extrovert. She's tends to mind her own business. She's relatively quiet unless we're at an event where we've consumed the right substance or are in the right mindset. At that point, she talks to everyone. And that's how I am too. I'll walk up to strangers and be like, "What's up, man? Hey," give people hugs and shit. It's like, but usually only when I'm high. That makes it a difficult one. I don't know. Wu Wei. I love herbalism, says Jonathan. I love Carpus plant medicine knowledge. Well, thank you. I'd talk more about that, except it's just I feel like I'm repeating myself. I've talked about pretty much every herb and plant that I can, and I have several books and studies and papers I've written and research I've done on dopamine and Parkinson's and serotonin and how these compounds relate. How when I take Mucuna pruriens, I get weird deja vu, and I started doing research saying I wonder if deja vu has anything to do with dopamine, because L-Dopa is in that stuff, and it's a precursor to dopamine. And so I started researching and finding these rare, weird, random studies that were just only a couple done about Parkinson's patients who are having a lot of deja vus after taking levodopa or L-Dopa, a medication that's to help Parkinson's patients. Just amazing how you can, point being that there's some basic little studies that I've looked into and said, things that could be really important, but as a novice and not a professional or an herbalist, that all I can do is say, this is, as a novice, this is what I've read. And I really think that there's some amazing studies and some amazing discoveries to be found about these plants, while at the same time realizing that they're overprescribed for just about everything. In other words, it's the same way the pharmaceutical industry has been about pharmaceuticals. This is a pill for everything. The panacea, as they call it. Well, there's also the same thing in the herbal world. It's the way people have been selling even kratom. It's good for this, it's good for that. Look at cannabis. Look at CBD is the perfect example. I've been a fan of CBD for 20 years before I read anything about it in mainstream, because it was still a lesser known compound. I was fascinated with it. It seemed to have anti-cancer benefits. That was before I realized it had anti-anxiety benefits, or anxiolytic rather, antidepressant effects, but also that it could help people, especially with seizures. And that's when we started making a bunch of growing high CBD weed. And my buddy was giving this extract to his friend's dog, and his buddy's dog it stopped their seizures. He had then there was Charlotte's Web, which was a strain of cannabis that was named after this girl named Charlotte, who was a young girl who had regular seizures, several every day. And after taking this CBD extract, her seizures basically fucking disappeared. It's amazing. It's like a miracle. So naturally you want to share that with the world. But what happens is these companies latch onto this idea, and now they're selling just CBD isolate from hemp plants as if it's this panacea cure-all. And it's really frustrating for somebody who respects herbs to see how people are selling it for everything. No, cannabis is not going to cure all your depression and anxiety, nor is CBD or any compound from it, nor is kratom going to heal you completely from your pain, or any drug going to save you, or any herb. That's the thing. There are ones that can help us, and we have to find out what those are. I mean, I literally have a tub down here with like 50 or 60 different types of herbs in there. Everything you can imagine. Down to akuama seeds, which I got as a opiate replacement for kratom back when I thought it was going to be banned, and all these different tea leaves and random herbs and powders. They're years old. I can't even do anything with them now. They're probably still useful, but they were all these little packets that I got over the years of these things to try, and I realized, wait a minute, you got to limit yourself and what herbs you consume, and be very careful not to over consume every single herb you see. So if you're taking an herbal cocktail every morning of like 10 herbs and you say, wow, this really helps me, maybe it's only one herb in that whole cocktail. And there are some that are dangerous. And this is my final note here, like licorice root extract. Uh, Licorice root extract I was selling for a while, along with rhodiola extract. I stopped selling them both right away. The rhodiola extract I found was active in very small amounts, like 100 milligrams was sufficient. But if you took more than that, it gave me a weird feeling. A feeling I can't explain. It was like almost an omnipresent self in front of the self type feeling, like just felt awkward and strange. I didn't like it. And then I read reports that some people had had that effect, so I stopped selling it. Then I was selling licorice root extract as an ingredient for one of my capsule blends I make. And I read that taking too much glycyrrhizic, licorice root, licorice extract powder especially, contains glycyrrhizic acids, and some can be useful for some things. Taking too much can actually poison you. And this is really important when it comes to herbs. Taking the right amount is what matters. Taking the right herb is what matters. If you're one of those people who just buys one of those big bottles of 100 capsules with like 20 different herbs in it, you're not doing yourself any justice. There have been studies to find that 30% of the herbs on the shelf don't even contain the recommended dosages of what they say, and like up to 20% don't include even at all some of the active compound. You can basically fill a capsule with hay and add a tiny bit of moringa powder, call it moringa, or anything else. And the truth is, one of the capsules that I make, it cost me like 25 to 30 cents each to make, just for the extract. That's why I didn't market them anymore, because it's like you have to charge 50 bucks a bottle for this little tiny bottle, and it's like, man, extracts really are expensive, but these big companies can cut corners. Say you're missing one of the compounds, that's okay, just throw something else in there, no big deal. But I'm gonna go grab one more beer, and I'll be right back for any final questions before I gotta go do the rest of life stuff. I'll be back, just a second. Yep. Sounds like the kids are in there having fun, being loud. That's what kids do, right? This stupid camera. My phone is sitting in like a microphone stand, so it's like super awkward and unbalanced, and I need some professional casting equipment here. Anyone want some hay pills? All right. Yeah. What's up, Andre? Yeah. What's up, Decatus? Is it Decatus? Yeah. Moonblade. He says, what would you suggest to keep the heart open? You'd have to clarify that. Exactly what you mean by that. I mean, is this a metaphor? Are you talking about an herb to keep you feeling emotional? If you could detail on that question a little better, I'd be glad to answer it. Walmart sells organic Kuhili moringa, I noticed. Yeah, I wouldn't buy any herbs from Walmart. In fact, I don't go to Walmart unless I absolutely have to. But yeah. Don't close it. That's a good answer, Daniel. That's my advice for the heart. Yeah, I'm actually very curious to know what you meant by that. But think of the heart. Okay, think of the heart as a macrocosm of the microcosm. And so you take a smaller part of the heart, right? Whenever I'm comparing something large to something small, I try to find something within that relates, a microcosm to the macrocosm. So within a heart, we have valves, right? Now those valves open and close. And I think that the the same way, just like the mind opens and closes, it breathes. It's like when you receive a bunch of information and knowledge, you read a new book or you watch a video that really hits you, right? Then you start to process that. You shut down your faculties of thinking and let your brain take over. It's what we call planting a seed in psychology or anything else, right? It's well-known metaphor. My buddies and I were talking about this the other day. you you never try to change someone's mind ever. It's pretty much pointless. Now you can change somebody's mind about um, you can't, not even about, I'm trying to think of an example of something you can change someone's mind. Like, hey man, I can do a backflip. And they're like, no, you can't. So you do a backflip. And they're like, oh fuck, you changed my mind. You can do a backflip. But when you say, oh hey, war is actually a bad thing. I'm like, oh well, okay. Well, what do you mean? We have to, defend ourselves. Oh, but then it gets into these complicated, situations, discussions. I think that people need time to think and process what they're told. So you plant a seed. If that seed takes root, it will grow, but it has to be nurtured. It has to be fertilized. If the ground is fertile, it will grow. So if you plant a seed in somebody's head, like something that they're going to think about in the back of their mind, it might take years for them to really process that. But if your heart's open, right, and your mind's open, you can share things when that's happening with other people. And their mind might be closed at the time. But eventually it'll open up and that will seep in and they'll start to think about it. And what we think is right isn't always right. And what we think is right for other people is very seldom right. We like to think that we have better answers. I know plenty of people who tell others how their lives would be better. It's just not a good thing to do. You should never give people advice on how to live a better life unless it's something you absolutely know that would benefit them. And even then, with a grain of salt. Andre says it's like that black guy who helped guys leave the Klan. Oh man, I know who you're talking about. And that story is fascinating, actually. If you don't know the story, and I don't remember his name, but all you have to do is type in black man Ku Klux Klan, and you'll probably come up with his name. The guy was so curious about why the Klan had issues with black people. So he went and talked to these people. Like Amy just said, I know what closes the heart, resentment. And that's exactly right. This is why many black men would have their hearts closed to the KKK or any of their interests. They'd be like, fuck those guys. Which, can you blame them? Hell no. But hate breeds hate. So what this guy did was he wanted to know the leader. He went and met the Klan leader. They became like best friends. Maybe not best friends, but they were really good friends. Up until their deaths, or at least one guy's death, whoever died first. Let me just tell you, I'm not going to spoil the story, but the black guy still has, Daryl, I saw Daryl, that might be his name, he still has the guy's robe. The Klansman gave him his robe and all his shit. And he's still got it, in his closet. And it's like, it's such a weird story and it's fascinating, but I think the guy ended up seeing the light later on after talking with this guy for so long. However, he was still in the Klan. It was weird because even when you're doing something isn't standing for what you think it stands for anymore, it's really hard to let go of that. I mean, just think about not just the people who were protesting because they were supporting, say, Trump, and people who thought they were doing the right thing in the Capitol, right? But the other side of the Antifa ones that everybody hates. The people who, even months ago, I said, I do support riots if they're productive and they have a point. But in this case, absolutely not. What they're doing is just pointless. It's just disgusting. And they think that they're in the right because they think that they're not understood, but they're not making themselves understood. They're not having a fucking dialogue, right? This is the problem. If people feel like they're not heard, then they get angry. And that's where resentment creeps in. That's where the heart really shuts down, is when we feel like nobody cares about our opinion. When we feel like we have no club, we have no team, we have nobody rooting for us, why the fuck should we care about anybody else's problems? And I really think that this is really at the root of most extremism, if you want to call it that, which has become a toxic word now. I feel like somebody said earlier, I was reading something about cancel culture. It was a video, and they were talking about how we can't even talk about certain things anymore because people are afraid of being considered that they're being offensive. There was the story of the one lady who was on her way to Africa, and she tweeted that, you know, I'm going to Africa. Hopefully I won't get AIDS. Just kidding. LOL, I'm white. By the time she landed that flight, she tweeted it before she left. By the time she landed, hours later, she'd lost her job. She'd had, hundreds of threats and death threats, complaints, and her Twitter account on everything. Her life was ruined overnight by a tweet that was misunderstood because people thought it meant one thing. They thought she was insulting blacks, right? When really she was acknowledging her own white privilege for the fact that they have better medicine and that the place where she was going, people weren't taken care of properly. Regardless of how you feel about somebody's choice of words, my point being that cancel culture or the fear of talking about certain subjects has made people so paranoid, so angry too, so under pressure about worrying about what they say. And I know some would say, well, that's good. They should be worried about what they say. No, this is a slippery slope with censorship. It goes nowhere. It never has a solution. If you try to stop people from saying certain things, that's one thing. When you accuse somebody of meaning something and not let them explain themselves, then they get angry. And that's the cause of hatred and resentment and anger. We often take it out on the wrong person. Like a person who was attacked one time by a minority, right? And they hate all Mexicans for the rest of their life because they got beat up by a Mexican when they were a kid, right? It's hard to break away from those fears. I don't know. it's confusing being a human and breaking away from our pre-programs, the way that we were programmed to believe certain shit. Hello, Hap. It says, hey, Carpo. What's it say? Just joining now. I'll catch up before typing. Not much to catch up with. We're just rambling about stuff. And talking about drugs, talking about the truth, the facts of being a human. As far as YouTube, it's really weird after 10 years still talking like this. There have been times where I've wanted to move forward. Some of my old subs have known that I've said this many times, that I'm going to change my channel, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and then I just end up just talking about random shit again. It's what I do. Like I was talking with my friend earlier, I was like, philosophy doesn't pay, right? If I were sitting here talking about politics all day and really stood by some extreme opinion for one side or the other, I'd probably, I could probably build up millions of subscribers, but it would be under a false pretense that I know what I'm talking about. That I really can stand by one viewpoint or another, and believe that that's 100% correct all the time. I feel like people are getting trapped in this paradigm, this left-right paradigm, and this, just like the religious, non-religious paradigm. The idea that, like Christians say, that their religion is under attack. Not because it's really under attack, but because not as many believers are joining the church. It's a misunderstanding of what's really going on. People feel threatened, in other words, when they feel like they're becoming the minority. That's a scary thing. That's why there's a lot of, I don't want to get into that because that's just too toxic to talk about here. But we'll just keep it neutral for the last little while. Like, it's really easy to play the victim. You think about all the angry people out there who talk about how the system screwed them over and they don't have fair opportunities, and then you find out that they're just not taking any initiative, right? And then they complain about others because they're not happy with their own lives. We see this so often. It's like the angry white male syndrome. It's not a matter of him being white. It's just that I know mostly white people. So there's angry black males, angry Mexicans, angry fucking males, females, everybody. There's Karens everywhere. But let's just say, as a guy, as a man in this world, I've met some really hostile males who are just reeking of testosterone, like trying to prove themselves That reminds me of a story my wife told me about one of the guys that got busted at the Capitol riots. He They busted him and they found all this ammunition on him, and I think, what did he have? He had a whole bunch of ammo, and then he had injectable testosterone. This dude was carrying injectable testosterone with him to the rally. I just thought, like, is this where we're at? Like, even a guy who doesn't feel that manly needs to inject more manliness into him to what? To feel manly. I don't get it. But I grew up in a day and age where what it was to be a man was changing drastically. And it's pretty confusing for Gen X. Being 45 years old, growing up in the 80s and 90s, we went through this phase where manliness took a back seat to being a sensitive guy. And I grew up with that in my mind, that being a sensitive guy was important. And I knew that, and it is true. But there was also a part of me that knew that you had to be tough. So, my dad would take us hiking in the desert and stuff. I have no problem getting scraped up and cut and bruised and beat up. It's just I'm not that kind of a guy who's scared of being hurt or, not looking my best. I'm a ragged dude, but I'm also an extremely sensitive guy. And to me, the most important thing is being balanced emotionally. That comes before anything else. I honestly think that if you can work on emotional intelligence in your life and just look it up, figure out what it means, try to understand how to be more emotionally intelligent. Because there are several different types of intelligence out there, and this is something that's not talked about enough. There are, I believe, seven. Some people say eight, others have 10. It doesn't matter. They're all just come up with by people, right? But there's artistic intelligence, there's academic intelligence, there's being able to read people, which really ties in with emotional intelligence, is the most important of all of them. Some people are very intelligent with language and with bookwork or with math, but they can't read people at all. Or they can't even understand a poem, but they know math. Or they can't understand any math, but they know a poem. Um, Being intelligent means at least emotionally intelligent, means you're in control of your emotions, meaning that you know how to respond without overreacting to people and how to kind of ponder and go, I think you're full of shit, without getting all upset about it. And this brings me back, I guess, to the question earlier that was posed about feeling lonely in this world, feeling like an outsider. I honestly think that most people feel that way, and there has to be a psychological term for it, and I'm not sure what it is. But it reminds me of imposter syndrome. And if you're not familiar with that, it's one that a lot of people suffer from. Even the things you have accomplished in your life, the things you have done, a lot of people feel like they're not worthy of it. And they may not vocalize that, but this is a very deep issue that permeates society. They think I'm not worthy of my wife, I'm not worthy of my job, or I have all this money, I shouldn't have this money, or I shouldn't have this car, or I haven't really worked hard enough for this or deserve this. You deserve what you have. Assuming you're even asking yourself that question, you probably deserve it. Because the people that have more than they need, they're the ones who always think they deserve it. There's a difference between being entitled and being lucky or having means. You're not always, if you work hard, you should do well. And that doesn't always work out because some people work hard and get nothing, and some people don't work at all and they get everything. But that's not what we need to look at. We got to look at our own lives. It's very difficult because we're always comparing ourselves to other people. Always comparing ourselves. One use of racism was to stay away from certain illnesses a long time ago. Yeah, I think that might have been an excuse. Really, it's just blaming people that look different than you, but it's very possible in certain times. Forrest says, been watching you since I was 15. I'm now almost 22. Holy shit. Wow, man. That's 7 years. That's most of my career on YouTube. It's been great, and it was particularly great when when younger to listen to such open thought and see some openness in the world through you. Well, thanks. Honestly, I found that I really try to affect. I try to be as open-minded as I can. I've changed a lot in that time too. In fact, I see things through a different lens now. Every time okay, if I put an idea out there to the world and I get a lot of feedback from it that is, let's say, disagreeing with it or has a different opinion, I do a lot of soul searching. Even though I still hold the opinion I might hold, I want to know why other people feel the way they feel. So, for example, during this election, when there are really people out there saying that half of the nation are all monsters or they're all demons or they're all evil, this is on both sides of the fence. I step back and say, well, wait, half the people can't be wrong and half the people right. It doesn't work that way. That's like saying your left brain is better than your right brain. Because I've compared the mind of society to the mind of an individual. Once again, the microcosm to the macrocosm. We have a left brain and a right brain. And it's not specifically that one's artistic and one's, academic. It's more complicated than that. But in some rare cases where the hemispheres of the brain are split or separated, there are some interesting things that take place. These hemispheres need to be connected. Just like left and right politics need to be connected. You discuss the issues, you work past your arguments, and you move on as adults. But we as a society, or as at least as a nation, in this nation, have got so caught up in confusion that and angst that we've fallen back into our tribal roots. But that's not really fair to our ancestors because that's making the impression that our ancestors were always fighting in tribes, and that's just not the truth. History shows a different, you know, like somebody said the other day, no empires last forever. I'm like, no, I agree. But democracies can last hundreds of years because most people want a democracy. Most people are looking for the same thing. It's just politics gets in the way, I guess. Stay true, dude. I definitely will. Daniel says, Josh had 300 subs my first sub. Holy shit, really? Yeah, I remember you were one of the earliest I had. Yeah, that was a long time ago. I still only have about 300 subs, honestly. Because when you build up a channel over 20 years, most of those subscribers aren't real subscribers, or at least those channels aren't used anymore, or they fade, or, you know. So a channel that was made last year that has 20,000 subs would have way more real-time viewers than mine does. And that's okay. I know that a lot of people left my channel when I started talking about politics. I just, in my heart, could not give a shit. I care. It wasn't about losing the subs. It was about losing the opportunity to talk with people about important issues. But I came across hostile a couple times, and I was really fed up with the bullshit people were spewing. And I do get emotional and animated sometimes, but I'm over it quickly. I don't hold resentment towards people. I learned that that's not always mutual. A lot of people hold resentment towards me for years after I have one argument with them. And it's got to be really sad to live that way. The guy who's just looking to make a negative comment about something I say. Like, that's like me going to it's like the atheists that go to religious YouTube channels in order to just talk shit to them. Or Christians who go to atheist channels to talk shit to them. Why are you exposing yourself to that opinion? You already know how they feel. So it's easy to buy into the arguments, but it's very seldom productive, and that's something that I've learned a lot. It's very important. Very important. Let go of bullshit and don't try to always have your voice heard with other people. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter most of the time. And don't give a shit about what people think about you. You're going to have to care a little bit. I mean, I don't come out here disheveled and, drooling all over myself. Sometimes I do. But, I try to at least look presentable, and I try to talk rational. I don't try to, I hate it when I make a video and I realize afterwards I was drinking and I was slurring my speech. I'm like, oh God, that's horrible. I sound like shit. And yeah, that's embarrassing, but that's kind of not seeing yourself because you can't see yourself as well as others can. So point being that I bounced the ideas off other people and hope that I gained something. Decatus Moonblade says, we need to stop watching TV. Speak for yourself. I haven't had TV in years. Well, we got rid of our cable 10 years ago, but I don't watch TV. I don't watch network television or anything, but I do enjoy a good movie, and I do watch videos on you. Mostly our family watches YouTube. It's pretty much all we watch. I mean, we put on Hulu in the evening. Might watch some Adventure Time or, you know, Family Guy or something, whatever it might be. But I used to watch South Park before everybody got rid of it. I still haven't seen the South Park Pandemic special, but that was one of my favorite shows ever because I think South Park dealt with these societal issues really well, especially over the last 10 years or so. Anyway. Nocturnal's Tech Talk. I love the casual talks. You drink a little and hit the vape, but drop a lot of knowledge. Thanks. Yeah, it's funny. I don't vape when I'm making a video usually, but when I'm doing a live cast, I always do. I think of this vape like a philosopher's pipe. When you see, like, you know, the old, when you picture a guy sitting back with a philosopher's weird tweed suit or something, and he's sitting there like puffing on his pipe. Um, I actually had a pipe for a while, or like a pipe vape for a while. And I thought that would be kind of nice, but it's all the same. How I ponder the world around me. All right. Amy says, I think that people are too scared to love. A lot of people really are. I Whenever somebody says something like that, I agree and then instantly think, what is the argument against that? It's like the devil's advocate thing. But some people are too scared to love. Yes. And some people are too scared to not love. And let me explain what I mean by that. People that I've met who say sign off with love and light, or people who say you have to tolerate and accept everyone, or people are just people, or it's all good, man, everybody's fine, huh? The people who try to smile all the time, the people who can't just sit there and go, I'm feeling kind of angry right now. They will always kind of hold back and try to put on this face like they're happy. I don't do that. If I'm not feeling good, I'll just make it well known. Usually I get over it pretty quickly. I don't hold in grudges or resentments or anger, but I sometimes just don't feel up to par. And I'm not the people pleaser. I've learned to not be that guy. The funny irony is my mom and I were, like, coincidence, my mom and I were talking about this morning, and she mentioned something how she was always a people pleaser in her life, and that she's finally found out how to just be herself and just do her own thing and not worry. And I was like, that's fucking awesome, because that's all I wanted from my mom or anyone else. Like, I don't expect anything. I want people to live their own lives and do their own thing. But especially, it's important to realize that we don't always have to cater to everybody else's needs. A lot of people suffer in their own lives because they're so busy worrying about what others think about them and what others need. And let me say, other people's needs is a very good thing to know about and understand, to be able to console somebody. But if you're one of those people who always walks up to everybody who's a guy sitting in the corner on his own, just doing something, hey, you all right, man? You all right? Just leave me alone. Like, sometimes you've gotta have that emotional intelligence to know when you're overbearing and when you're too lovey-dovey, right? Because being human, we can't always be in love and light. It's easy to do if you're not a guy who lives in a war zone. If you're not constantly being bombed and your neighbors don't have their heads blown off by an IED or something. I mean, different places, different methods. But to try to put it into the right words, only in the West can we be comfortable enough to be offended. I think I heard that one time. Um, Something along that lines, but only those of us who live in a comfortable existence can worry about things like being offended by what somebody else thinks or does or says. Most people are too busy trying to live. You say something you don't like, then fuck off, And that's kind of how I've tried to live. I accept all people and I try to trust everyone. I've been robbed, I've been wronged by people and stolen from, but I forgive and I forget. Never forget, but I always forgive. And if somebody screws me over, if they flake on me, if they catch me at a time when I don't even want to have company, I'll just straight out say, I don't want to hang out. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do anything tonight. Or, I don't agree with the way you think. If somebody has an opinion that I don't want to beat around the bush on, it's important to be straightforward with people. you will be happier as an individual. And here's what I'd like to say to anybody out there who struggles with this. If you can't speak your mind to people, you're going to be the one who suffers in the end. If you can and you start speaking it up, you don't have to be a dick about it. But it's kind of like when people come to my channel and they start attacking me. I never mute people. In fact, I'll let them say all the shit they want to me for even years on end. But once people start with personal attacks and continue them, I'll give them a warning and say, I'm just going to mute you from my channel, right? And they'll give me this whole spiel about freedom of speech. Mute. Don't care. I don't care what you have to say. I don't give a shit about your opinion if all you're going to do is complain about you should have the freedom of speech to insult me every day. Because I don't need to listen to it. And all of us should have that same right to not have to listen to other people's bullshit when they're feeding it to us. And that goes for random strangers on the internet, just like friends, just like family. Your parents, your kids, anyone. You don't have to put up with people's bullshit. But they don't have to put up with yours either. So you better be ready for that if you start speaking up on it. Oh, Andre says, how do you love a stranger, though? I've cried for people I've never met just because of their situation. I don't know how you can love a stranger, but I do. I really don't know. It's a different kind of love. Most TV is corny, Andre says. You're right. But I'm going to tell you one show that we started watching recently. I haven't watched any network shows in years. But we started watching a show called the... Oh, God. Why can't I remember it? I know the song. It's in my head. It keeps getting longer every day. It's an 80s show. It's based in the 1980s. There's a mom and a dad who's always sitting in his chair, and 2 sons and a daughter. And the Goldbergs is what it's called. Cheesy as hell. NBC or ABC, I don't know who makes it, but it's on Hulu. And my kid loves it. He's like 8. It's so funny because it's back at an innocent time. Nobody had phones yet. Everybody was just doing their thing. You know, they bring up all the things like Walkmans and all the things from the 80s that I grew up with. It's kind of like that 70s show, but it's narrated. It reminds me of that show, The Golden Years, I think it was. Isn't that The Golden Years? Shit. Now, I hate it when you think of something you can't picture it. But anyway, that show from back in the day, which was more about the 60s or 70s. But the 80s were the time I grew up in, so that's like the only network show that I've watched recently. But it is pretty good, if you grew up in the 80s. It's funny. Andre says, some anxiety issues? Well, I definitely hope you work them out. The potato. He says, I'm watching Legion on Hulu, says UF. Legion. I don't know that one. I'm not sure what that one is. I think that's, is that the one about like demons and stuff? I can't remember. I don't watch a lot of movies, so. Yeah, he says The Golden Years with Adam Savage. That's what it was. Fucking Savage. It wasn't Adam, it was Fred Savage, right? Fred Savage. That's right. Wait, was it? Or was it Adam? Did he have a brother? Now I'm confused. I thought it was Fred Savage. Andre says, some shows ain't bad. I can't stand the 5-minute commercials. That was what it was. First off, I do not watch commercials. I fucking hate them. Second off, I don't watch the news. There's nothing worse. Honestly, when NBC like comes on the autoplay or something, and it's like, dun 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 dun. This is Lester Holt, and tonight, breaking news. It's like, oh my god, you know, the breaking news shit started back in the 90s with the goddamn fucking, oh god, it was the worst. The O.J. Simpson trial. Back then, I was buying speed from this guy who lived with his mom, and he was like 40. And just a total loser, had like a meth lab in his own house, and his mom was this old lady that sat in her chair all day and watched the news all day. There's so many old ladies like that just sit and watch media all day. It's the worst. Worst thing you can do for your health. But it's like you're waiting for a story to break, right? Well, back in the day, they didn't do that. They would give you the news and they'd move on. After the OJ thing, it was 24-hour news coverage. They realized how much money they could make. And then, you know, they had to start. That's when the whole 24-hour news channel started. And it just became about getting people's attention and making money. The news wasn't always about profits. It wasn't always about cash. It was about giving information at one time. But once the fairness doctrine was eliminated in the 1980s in the Reagan era, that all fell apart. So the Great British Bake Off. Yeah. Ben Savage, that's right. If it ain't a terrorist takeover, it ain't breaking news. Yeah, well, what is breaking news, right? I mean, that's one of the things. Like, even if it was a takeover, are they taking over your town? That brings me back to what I said at the beginning of this, video. You don't have to get sucked into all the bullshit drama. If you turned off the news for a month and you just lived your life in your own town, wherever you live, what would it be like at the end of that month? And you turn the news on. What would you have missed? It's kind of like unless the pandemic had just broke out, or you were unaware of a lockdown or something, or there were some riots in Portland. Even if you'd never heard of any of the riots in Portland, for example, over the past several months, and you went down to Portland one night to hang out, it would be the same as any other night, other than COVID restrictions and lockdowns. But there's a bunch of broken windows on some buildings and some boarded up. But for the most part, 99% of the city is untouched, okay? This is the important thing. It's not like a fire-bombed fucking Dresden or something. But when we watch the news, you would think that the whole town is on fire. I've had people tell me, your whole town is burning down, your cities are burning. I'm like, oh, really? I didn't see that. Like, wake up, people. You're getting attacked by these invisible entities that are destroying your whole city that you're unaware of, even though you live in that city. Yeah, my point being this, and that I think this would be a kind of a cool challenge. You hear about like things like No Nut November, or like the dry January, or whatever it is, like where people try not to drink or do drugs for a whole month, things like that. Why don't we have a you know, no media July or something, or a no media June, where it's the goal is for nobody to turn on the news or watch any news reports for a whole fucking week, even a week. I was gonna say a month, but most people could not make it that long. But I challenge all of you to not turn on the news for a week. It should make like a pact with a group of people, because in our minds we want to see what's going on. Being informed is important. It is, but not when it's always negative. And I don't know. That's a difficult one. Very difficult one. Amy says, I miss British comedy most of all. I don't like British comedy, but I do watch it. I was not the Monty Python guy, but I did watch one recently called Horrible Histories, and it's on Hulu, I think. And it's a British show where they lay out some of the horrible. It's got like a lot of animations and skit comedy. It reminds me a lot of Monty Python style stuff, and it's got a lot of medieval stuff in there. So naturally, it's going to remind me of that. A bunch of British guys on horseback, of course. It's going to remind me of Monty Python, armor and swords and knights. But they tell you the real histories, some of the stupid things that the Tudors did and these different groups over in Europe. How King Henry VIII had all his wives killed, things like that. And it's pretty humorous and entertaining. I would definitely recommended show to watch. I think it's kind of funny. Stress levels would go down. You're absolutely right. If you stop watching the news, stress levels would go down, because you read an article and you think, oh my God, but really most of it's bullshit. So I'm going to go in a couple minutes. I'm just flipping through the comments. Hello, Tobacco Row. Stay here and watch keeps me from destroying radio-controlled airplanes. Yeah, I've never been interested in those. I would wreck them big time. I've got a drone hanging up here that I got. I've crashed it several times. I'm not very good with flying aeroplanes, but I think having a radio-controlled plane would be awesome. Except you can pretty much fly just as fast with a drone now. But the one thing I did see was a radio-controlled jet. It was pretty fucking sad. It was like a huge one. It was like 6 feet long, and they launched it. And they came back for a landing and it totally exploded on the ground. I was thinking, God, that's an expensive fucking hobby. Gotta say. Ignorance is bliss. I wouldn't know. Or maybe I do. I don't know. We've made more comedy since the 70s. Yeah, I haven't seen any of it. I don't have a British sense of humor. I really don't. I don't find that shit funny. It's just not funny to me. I like really, really edgy stuff. I do. Tell your favorite joke. Oh, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That was a great movie. Hello, Ro. Remember the South Park drone episode? Of course I do. That was a great episode of South Park. That was the one where it was, what's his name's mom's bush. And they caught her bush on a drone photo and they posted it on the internet. And the whole town was telling her how she has to do some landscaping down there on her crotch. And it was a pretty fucking funny episode. God, whose mom was it? Doesn't matter. Great show. I love it. South Park touches on things that, unless you've watched several episodes, you can't really understand their humor. It can be a shocker at first, but I guarantee if you watch 3 or 4 seasons of South Park, along with what's going on in the world, you get it. But if you're watching older seasons, it could be an issue that we don't even remember. There have been so many weird things that have happened since South Park came out 20 years ago that, yeah. $100 replacement airplanes for learning. Dude, I couldn't spend $100 on an airplane for learning anyway. That's still a lot. Shit, I think my drone wasn't even much more than that. Bullocks. Yeah, the mini drones are kind of cool. Comments are great. How does the creator from The Simpsons know so much before it happens? Oh, they don't. It's just that once you've made 500 episodes with current events, we're going to get repeating stories that happen. I think, as Moonblade just says, we know very little. And I guess that depends on what knowledge is, really. We can know a lot about the world, and this is something I've noticed with people. They can know a lot about what's going on in the world. They can know a lot about mathematics. They can be what you would call a philosopher today, which is somebody who took a philosophy class and learned about other philosophers. But none of that helps us really in our most important endeavors. So at least that's what I've found. Being a human's hard. Anyway, I'm about to go now. I'm tired. Well, I'm not tired yet, but I've been in here too long and it's already 9:30 and I better tuck my kids into bed. So it's been real. Much love to you all. And if you guys want to continue the discussion, you're always welcome to join my Discord server. It's actually really cool. I don't join new social media groups. I hate Facebook, things like that. But I have several different little groups on, and it's really easy to sign up for. There's no ads or anything like that. And I have my own little groups, and there's private groups, chat groups, things like that. I have one that's about honest drug talks, one that's about spiritual experiences. They're little, specific titled areas for people to share their info. So it's been real. Peace and love. It's good to see you all. Have a wonderful evening. Take care of each other. And take care of yourselves. Come join. Peace.